I'm Jason Salavon. The title of this show is All the Ways. Loosely refers to a consideration of how permutation and variation, supercharged by computation and digital networks, allows us to explore myriad possibilities. So the way that the digital culture has sort of accelerated startups and visual culture and all of these things, I'm interested in it as an artist. And that takes many forms, and I think that's part of what All the Ways refers to. In one body of work, I'm exploring every single episode of The Simpsons, seasons 1 through 26, and I'm exploring it in myriad different ways, dealing with the color of the episodes. So again, this is me deep diving into variation and permutation aided by kind of computational means. So I've taken each episode in the wallpaper behind me, and each square is an episode of The Simpsons. So starting in the upper right, that's episode 1, season 1, and sort of going all the way through. Other pieces in the show explore The Simpsons as well as the internet and Wikipedia, and also sort of the history of still life painting, particularly Giorgio Morandi's work, through the lens of a kind of infinite generator. So in most of my work, the way it's made, one aspect I think of my project in general is that formally the way things look can vary a lot. But underneath of that is a kind of conceptual consistency with regard to investigating form through data, what people call data now, but also just sort of content, popular culture. And aligned with all that is a process of writing software. So most all of my projects involve me and a small team of people writing software from scratch or through other custom ways. The core of the practice is enabled by being able to sort of put together things in really, hopefully interesting ways that don't echo off-the-shelf software. In the case of sort of the averaging layered works like the couch gag piece, that's about over 500 couch gags, every single couch gag, overlaid through by means of a piece of software that we've written. The piece of software itself also generated the wallpaper, it generated all the images in the books, it generated the target piece. So one of the new things that's happening in this show is an investigation of this color manipulation that I've done throughout my work in a more total and holistic way. So essentially we've built one single piece of software that is capable of generating sort of overlaid things or color average things through the whole gamut. And the books are really exploring that sort of variation, but it's essentially unified two aspects of my practice over the last 15 years that had kind of been separate projects. And I sort of came up with a method of unifying all that in a kind of conceptually and algorithmically consistent way. Also, it gives me at the studio this chance to really explore all of these different possibilities, all of the interstitial and intermediate types of forms when you're talking about taking essentially frames of video and looking at the color of that and then reformatting that for different visual outcomes. The choice of using The Simpsons is not really about The Simpsons itself. I love the show, I grew up with it, so there's nostalgia in there. It's about having a really massive corpus of common material to start from so that I can engage in this kind of exploration in a way that is communal, that other people share sort of understanding and relationships to. So that mass of material, 574 episodes, 30 frames a second, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of frames, allows me both an opportunity for kind of rigorous exploration and also lots of dancing and discovery and accidents. And although I use computation and computers, a lot of my processes feel painterly in a kind of exploration of possibilities. One of the capabilities is that things can be done sort of at a massive scale. On the south wall is two pieces that are related, one actually on top of another. The wallpaper is called the Master Index. It's part of a larger series of wallpaper pieces based on a ranking of Wikipedia that I actually did in the studio. So I just had this thought about what are the most popular Wikipedia pages, meaning like which ones get seen the most. With the help of some assistants and students, we built a list. I call it the Master Index. This piece has taken lots of different forms. The one here is just the top 225, and it's a really scary, interesting, bizarre, weird, fun, all of these words list in that. That top group is uniformly, or mostly Western popular culture, history and geography, the internet and sort of computation itself, and sex. And everything in the top 250 is essentially one of those four categories of things. And it starts to tell you, and if you look at the list and sort of peruse it and see this almost a concrete poetry of how things sort of interact, it's a taste of culture that I'm really interested in. On top of that piece is a real-time work that's talking to the internet in real time and grabbing Wikipedia pages for art world entries on this master index I was talking about. And this particular one is site-specific in that it's Los Angeles-centric. These are their Wikipedia pages. So from that Wikipedia starting point, I'm taking the source code and essentially tessellating or making triangles out of the literal layout of the thing. So I mentioned concrete poetry. In a sense, there's a concrete poetry that defines the kind of contours of this real-time triangulation that's happening. The last works in the show, it's actually a single work that I'm showing twice. It's called Still Life, then parenthetically Morandi's Infinite Shelf, and that refers to the still life painter Giorgio Morandi, whose work I admire, and I've endeavored to design a system to generate an infinite shelf of still lifes. It's the same piece, I'm showing it twice because I've really invested in variety, so I want the thing to sort of have ebbs and flows of tone and color, of form. So showing two versions running simultaneously allows one to sort of get a sense for the kinds of variation. It's real time. In practice, it is infinite. While it sort of has a look and feel, it won't repeat itself. It's not a video in that sense. It's running in real time and it's rendered in real time. The shapes of the forms, there's a lot that goes into thinking about them, but they tend to be in families. Again, this harkens back to that original title, All the Ways. Rather than using, say, all of the Simpsons, I'm actually interested in generating a kind of riff off still life painting in a sort of real-time digital form.